We turn now to CBS News senior political editor Steve Chaggaris, also in Washington. And Steve, we'll get to the inauguration proceedings in a moment, but let's begin now with this issue surrounding Mr. Trump's pick to be the next Secretary of Health and Human Services, Congressman Tom Price. How damaging are these revelations?
It could be pretty damaging. I mean, if Schumer gets his way and the Office of Congressional Ethics starts to look into this, keep in mind there's an act called the Stock Act that was passed a few years ago that applies to members of Congress and prevents them from this kind of insider trading. Now, I can't tell you whether Tom Price is actually guilty of insider trading, but it's things like this where members playing the stock market and then in turn trying to boost the value of that stock by perhaps knowing what they know inside Congress. These are the questions that are going to be asked by Democrats, or at least the questions they want answered, and we'll see what happens moving forward. There's no question it's going to come up at the confirmation hearing. I think Price thought he dodged a bullet when that first story came out, the Wall Street Journal story, that major reference. That came out just before Christmas, sort of, fell behind because of the holidays, but now this new revelation is shining light on this again. There's going to be a lot of questions.
It does appear, again, cut and dried, at least as we know the facts at present. Meanwhile, these confirmation hearings to come now will come as this back and forth between the president-elect and the intelligence community, specifically outgoing CIA Director John Brennan, does continue. Brennan is now fired back at Mr. Trump, calling the tweet from last week in which he compared the community to Nazi Germany repugnant. He went on to suggest that the president-elect had essentially defamed not just the 117 CIA officers memorialized on the wall, but the families as well. What is the impact here 3 days out from inauguration?
Well, one of the major impacts is the morale of the intelligence community. I mean, that's been reported on by CBS about how it's lower in the wake of Donald Trump's comments, and he's only continuing with these comments about the intelligence community. It's going to be a big cleanup for people like Mike Pompeo, who's going to take over CIA, and Dan Coats, who's going to be the new DNI director. They're going to have to deal with these intelligence agencies and the intelligence community to basically to clean up this mess that Trump has done in terms of disparaging the intelligence community. It's just continuing. You have Republicans suggesting to Trump to stop doing this, and he just hasn't.
And in the office that he will officially hold 3 days from now, words certainly matter, Steve. And it's not just the intelligence community. We've seen what he's been doing with Congressman John Lewis of late. He has criticized Angela Merkel. He has called NATO obsolete. He fires off 140 characters or fewer, and you mentioned it. The cleanups then remain. Do you believe he will continue this sort of multi-front battle?
I don't see any evidence that this is going to change. He's done this throughout the campaign, and frankly, he's really done this throughout his career. There was an article written in Politico last week looking at his tweets and the effects of these tweets and how people react to them. And they talked to a longtime Trump Organization employee who basically said Donald Trump's MO is to walk into a room, throw all the cards in the air and see how they fall, and watch everybody sort of pick these cards up in a sort of messy way. It tends to work out for Trump in the end. It might not work out so well for the others who are picking up the cards, but for Trump it seems to work out. This chaos theory seems to work very well for him. And so, I don't see this changing, him sort of dealing with all these battles, these multi-front battles here. This is something that he's continued to do. Most people who get into politics like to have a little cleaner of a situation, but Trump doesn't seem to work that way.
Well, there is quite a difference between a campaign and an administration. Lastly, on the way out, we mentioned more than 36 now House Democrats are expected to boycott Friday's inauguration. I know you sent a note actually yesterday that we found. In fact, Congressman John Lewis also did not attend President Bush's inauguration. He referred to the legitimacy of his presidency as well in so abstaining. Can we expect, though, this number to rise in the next 72 hours?
I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, and let's just look at this from the politics of it, right? So Democrats are out there saying they're standing on principle. We're not going to go to this inauguration. Republicans are saying, come on, man, what would you do if the tables were turned? If if Hillary Clinton was elected president and we boycotted, you'd be complaining about that. But I did some research for you, Josh, just to answer this question in terms of the politics of this. It's pretty interesting. So of the 36 Democrats who have said they are not attending the inauguration because of Trump, 32 of them had won their elections in November by at least 60% of the vote. 2/3, at least 70% of the vote. So there's not a lot of, there's not a big risk for them to come out and do this politically.
Politics as usual, dare you say, Steve Chaggaris, in Washington, no less. Who would have thought? Well, wonders never cease. Steve, as always, we appreciate the time.
Thanks, Josh.